Alright, welcome back. Alien Senses here. I would like to show you how to manipulate audio in real time using granular synthesis. I have explored this technique in my previous YouTube video in a much longer form. So I highly suggest that you take a look at that video in order to better understand the process and the principles behind such a live approach. Anyways, let's dive in and take a look at the setup that I have here. I'm using Ableton Live Lite 11 that came with my Focusrite Scarlett Solo. You could easily implement this technique in the other editions of Ableton Live. Anyways, I have two return channels here on the right containing a delay and a reverb. And I have three audio channels here on the left that are my primary instruments to manipulate the source audio in real time. Now, the source audio that I'm using here is a track from my previous album, Shimmering Love. This is a pre-master of one of the tracks on the album. And I do have a tape noise on channel 3. Very basic. Now these three audio channels here are primarily used for recording the output from channel 1, 2 and 3 respectively. I have deactivated these channels in this project since I'm not gonna record anything. This is just a demonstration of the process. So yeah, that's it for the layout here. It's a very rudimentary setup that I have here, and it's partly due to the fact that I'm running Ableton Live Lite 11, which allows me a maximum of 2 return channels and a total of 8 audio or MIDI channels. So yeah. Anyways, let's take a look at the effects that I have on the return channels. So I have a granular delay on the return A. It's a plugin by SoundHack. Now you can see the delay time is set to 2.4 seconds. Feedback is at 104. The density is very high and the grain size is large enough to produce an atmospheric texture that I'm looking for. Let me go ahead and solo this. I apologize for the CPU overload. Alright, so now if I reduce the grain size here, the sound becomes more time stretched and a bit glitchier when I reduce this. So let's take a look at how it sounds when I reduce the grain size. I'm going to turn up the gain from channel 1 so we can better hear the results. I just turned off a few plugins on channel 2 just to save some CPU. So you can hear the sound has become more time stretched, and you can hear a lot more of the particles or the grains. I'm looking for a drawn out atmospheric texture, so I'm going to increase the grain size back to its original value. You can hear the difference. It becomes this nice drone. So yeah, that's it for the sound hack granular delay. I have a compressor next to it to bring out the overall loudness of the sound. This is without the compressor, and this is with. This is a default Ableton Live compressor, just one of the presets here. It's the acoustic preset. Now I have a channel EQ right after that, cutting out the low end of the sound. I do not want any low end from these channels here because I have this channel 2 here, primarily dedicated for the lower end and the mid-range of the audio spectrum. You can hear quite a lot of the low end coming from this channel here. And channel 1 focuses on the upper mids and the high part of the audio spectrum, and a little bit of the mids as well. I'm gonna turn off the plugins on channel 2 for now. Let's get into the return B channel. I have a reverb here, but it's a plugin called Guitar Gadgets. It has a beautiful reverb engine. I'm gonna solo this. I have the delay and the effect almost maxed out. The decay is maxed out completely, and I have bumped up the input by 6 dB to add some gain to the signal. Now, to really hear what the reverb is doing overall, I'm going to activate channel 2 once again. And you'll hear the difference instantly. The reverb is just drowning the sound and just blurring it out, creating this beautiful atmosphere. In a practical sense, I could resample the sound coming from the reverb and use it as an intro or an outro to an ambient or a drone piece. And obviously that would come at a later stage, during the composition stage, I would say. It's more of the, this does not have any compositional significance in the music creation process. This technique here is just an experimentation and to generate materials, atmosphere or drone materials, for us to take it and mangle it once again in the composition stage. Once you have the live manipulation results recorded here, you could then render it out and take it into a new project and cut it up and mangle it and start to put a piece together. But right now our focus here is to generate enough materials to act as an entry point into a composition. So yeah, I have a channel EQ once again cutting out the low end here on the return channel B. So yeah, anyways, that's it with the return channels. Let's just get into a master real quick. I have a limiter here on the master. I'm using this to prevent any unexpected spikes in audio levels that may occur when I'm messing around with the sounds here. So yeah, this is here as a safety measure. Next to it, I have this plugin here called Restream by Reaper. I'm using this to route the Ableton audio to OBS Studio for me to make this video that you're watching. So yeah, it serves no other purpose other than routing the audio from Ableton to OBS. So yeah. Now let's get into these three channels here and let's check out channel 3, which has the tape noise. I'm gonna leave these at a low volume for now. This is the original tape noise here. So I have a couple of effects. I have a convolution reverb by Melda here that's adding a bit of a room tone to it, or maybe an acoustic space. Oops. So yeah, just injecting a bit of a room space to the sound. I have a channel EQ cutting out the low end, and I have a distortion pedal plugin here. Which is just crushing the sound. I can play with the drive value here. And the filter cutoff. I'm gonna leave it at that for now. The reason why my CPU is getting crushed is because I'm running Ableton and OBS Studio to capture this, and it's just taking up all the CPU. So yeah, usually when I'm doing this by myself, I'm okay with the CPU load. So it allows me to just capture the sound without any disturbance. I'm gonna turn off the tape noise. Now these are the channel 1 and 2 are my primary instruments to manipulate the source audio in real time. I'm using granular synthesis, and the brains of the operation here is this plugin RIBS. It's a granular engine. Currently it's on the FX mode, which means that it's acting as an audio effect. So I have the source audio stored in a buffer here. I'm looping a part of the sound, creating this drone texture here. Now in my previous video, what I do is I switch between channel 1 and 2 and just messing around with the loop length and the loop position and changing a few parameters to see what really happens. And yeah, I just record the output, and I have the material recorded here. Yeah, so it's a really useful technique when you want to create textures that are quite liquid in its form. There is no MIDI here or any programming involved, or cutting up the audio and placing it in the right position. So this is pure experimentation. You're letting go of all the other aspects of music creation. So yeah, I highly suggest that you watch the video to get a feel of how this technique really works. But yeah, what I can do now is I'm gonna right click and choose this part of the audio file that is stored in the buffer, and I'm gonna change the loop position by right clicking. I can mess around with the, I would say, the grain length here. So yeah, currently it's on the beat mode performance. So there are 3 performance modes in RIBS. The notes here is the full granular, it has the full granular functionality, and beat is semi-granular. Simple acts as a basic sampler, so there are no granular aspects involved in the simple performance mode. So I'll be switching between these 3 and see where that leads me. So if I choose the notes mode, so the fraction here that you're seeing controls the playhead here, the position of the playhead. So currently the playhead is not moving quite a lot, but if I change the numerator value here, you start to see the playhead just being scrambled across the audio file stored in the buffer. So you can see it start to move around. Now you could even change the denominator value here, which produces the more of the time stretchy and the glitchier part of the aspects of the granular synthesis. Sorry. So yeah, I'm going to increase the denominator value here. Essentially, the greater the difference between the denominator and the the numerator and the denominator here, here, the smoother the sound will be. I prefer to have the maximum value at the top. That way it generates a denser atmosphere. It resembles the source audio here. So that's it for the notes performance mode. I could in my previous video, I do play around with the other parameters here, like the grain overlap, the warp or the wrap, and the mirror parameter here. When you increase the value here, you can see the grain starts to overlap. And it's saying big overlaps equates to high CPU load. So that's one of the reasons why my CPU is getting crushed. So I think that RIBS deserves its own video in order to explore its full capabilities. So I might even take on RIBS in a different video. But for now, let's just stick to the fundamentals here and check out what I was really doing in my previous video. So now to change the content in the buffer here, what I can do is hit refill this or R this, and it will replace the audio that is stored in the buffer with the incoming audio from the source file here. So I'm gonna hit R this. So it's going to refill the buffer and stop because the refill mode is on hold. So yeah, it's going to refill and then it's going to hold. But I could have this running the entire time. Like I could have it running indefinitely by changing the refill mode to run. And it just keeps running, creating these interesting progressions, as you can hear in a moment. This resembles the generative aspects of ambient music, where you have a couple of instances of RIBS running like this, and you could have a generative piece of music just going on, and you don't have to do anything. I'm gonna turn up the gain so you can hear this better. So yeah, there are other parameters here. There is a high pass filter here, the envelopes here, the filter envelope and the amplitude envelope. Yeah, so the other important parameters here, like the repeat, that changes the characteristics of the sound. So yeah, let's just check out the other performance modes. I'm gonna switch to the beat performance mode here. This has a little bit of the sampler vibes here. You can see the file just looping, as if you had a sampler and a granular engine merged together. I haven't read the manual yet, so I'm not completely aware of what these parameters do in depth. So I'm planning to read the manual sometime and really understand what this engine is capable of. But for now, I'm just messing around, so yeah, there you have it. Now there are other ways in which you can change the characteristics of the sound. Right now, the loop length is fairly large, or somewhere around the medium size, but I can loop a very short part of the audio file just by right-clicking and dragging. Here, I'm going to right-click and drag across the buffer here. This produces that stuttery, the looping characteristics of the granular synthesis or even sampler. It's a bit glitchier compared to the longer loop lengths. So yeah, this keeps going on forever. Now, I'm gonna activate channel 2 and you'll see together they produce this beautiful textures that are dancing with each other. I'm gonna switch over to the channel 2 where I have RIBS once again. But now the only difference is that I have transposed this by an octave by using this play rate knob here. So if you hold shift and use your mouse wheel to bring it down an octave or go up an octave. So I'm going to hold shift and just bring it back to the original octave the source audio is in. So I'm going to hold shift and move my mouse wheel up by one value. I'm going to bring it back down by an octave. Oops. If you double click on the play rate, it goes back to the default value of 1. So I want the low end from the channel 2, as I had mentioned earlier. So I'm going to stick with that. So yeah, I just switched between channel 1 and 2 and just mess around with the parameters, the loop length and the loop position, just to create these textures that are not really consistent, but sometimes it produces interesting results. I'm going to change the refill mode on channel 2 as well to run. So let's see how that sounds. I'm using the tape noise to add a bit of grit to the overall sound coming from 1 and 2. So you can hear a bit of the clicks and pops that are coming from channel 2 here. That is because of the looping of the audio here. Since it's a very short amount of looping, it creates this glitchy sounds that comes out of it. So yeah, in my previous video, I just keep playing around like this for like an hour, and sometimes the results are quite interesting, and the other times they're quite useless. So yeah, I would suggest that you play around for like 30 minutes or an hour and keep playing around and see where that takes you. Probably you will come up with 10 minutes or 15 minutes of interesting progressions out of that hour of performance. That way, yeah, you could take it to the next stage and cut it up and get a composition going on. I have a couple of effects here. For now, let's jump to channel 1. I'm gonna deactivate the effects here, the RIBS and the convolution reverb that I have. I'm gonna turn off the effects. You can hear the original audio. Since I made the track, I know which parts here have the appropriate content for me to manipulate. So yeah, I have selected this part here, which I think is the peak of the track, and somewhere around here. I'm gonna turn on the convolution reverb here. It's adding a bit of the room tone. Once again, I have the drive it set to 50%. It has a chambers IR here. I'm using the small one preset. I'm gonna change it to this one here, the rich chamber. Sounds nice. And I'm gonna turn on RIBS once again. I have a utility here after RIBS that is making the low end mono, and I have a compressor next to it to level out the sound and just to bring out the overall loudness. Now you can see that I have a limiter at the end of the chain, and you can see it's acting up. There is some gain reduction going on, and you know, this is because when I'm messing around with the parameters here, I do not want any unexpected jumps in audio levels that may just end up clipping, and it could be detrimental to your hearing or to your headphones or to your speakers. So I highly suggest that you slap on a limiter at the end of the chain during these live improvs. So yeah, I have the same settings on channel 2. The only difference is that I have a channel EQ probably to just to bring out the low end a little bit, to increase the low end. I have a OTT, multi-band compressor, to bring out the low end once again. I have the same utility here, making the low end mono, and a limiter once again at the end of the chain. So yeah, that's the basic gist of this technique here. It's very basic, but it can generate interesting results. Right now I'm just using just a single audio file here as the source for example's sake. However, in a practical sense, what you could do is you could have multiple audio samples, like your piano, your guitar, or your violin, or your cello. You could have multiple instruments here and trigger them, and then mess around with the parameters in RIBS to generate interesting textures and interesting sounds. You could do that on channel 1 and 2 and really come up with complex and sophisticated textures and sounds. The purpose of this technique is to generate materials, atmospheres, and interesting glitchy sounds. If you would like, just come up with the materials that act as an entry point into a composition. So we can take the results here, put it on another project, and just cut it up and start putting a piece together. So yeah, there is no compositional significance to this particular technique here at the moment. If you're using Ableton Live, Suite, or Standard, you could have multiple return channels and several instances of RIBS or any other granular engine, and yeah, you could just manipulate the audio in real time to really create dense and atmospheric textures. Really complex stuff. But it really doesn't matter, because it really depends on the source audio and what your intentions are, because I could have 1,000 samples here and end up with nothing in the end, so it really doesn't matter. But I could have a single instrument like a piano and end up creating really interesting results with just a single instrument. So it really comes it really depends on the audio source and your intention behind it. We can dive into this technique, we can dive deeper into this technique at a later time as I develop this technique or the process. I'm still trying to explore what's really possible here. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope it was valuable to you. If this video was valuable to you, please like and share and subscribe, all that jazz. So yeah, it would really help me out or help the channel out. So in the next video, what I'll be doing is I'll create a couple of phrases with different instruments like piano, guitar, maybe a violin, or maybe a bass sound or something, and put it here and start messing with the sound in real time and generate interesting textures, record the output, and then take it to a new project and maybe put a piece together. So let's see how that goes. I'm really looking forward to doing that and sharing it with you. So yeah, I'm thinking if there's anything else that I'd like to mention, but I don't find anything interesting other than what I have mentioned in this video. So yeah, maybe I will come up with another video explaining the principles and the intent behind this technique in a much deeper sense, So yeah, probably I'll tackle it in the next video. Because to be very honest, I don't understand this technique completely. So yeah, it's kind of new to me as well. And this is how I made my first album. I took a piece of music that I had made and used that as the source and create the entire thing. So yeah, I'm aware that this technique could be quite powerful in making experimental and ambient music. So yeah, I hope this technique evolves into a much better animal, So yeah, anyways, that's it for this video, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.